This is the Celtic Exchange Weekly. This is Tino, and this week I'm joined by James, Paddy and Miff as we cover all things Celtic. Celtic closed out their tour of Japan with a win over Gamba Osaka to round off a worthwhile week for the boys in the Far East, and now head back to Lennoxtown where the hard work continues ahead of the new season. Miff, we spoke about transfer panic buttons last week and when the right time to be pressing them should be. Is your hand currently hovering above it just now, or has the recent transfer talk eased your fears a bit?
Hello Tino, hello Paddy, hello James, hello listeners. No, the hand's above the button, ready to press down. There's no announcements. It is all just talk. I want action.
Where specifically?
Just directly outside Celtic Park.
That'd be nice. Given the result on Wednesday, the 6-4, a few eyebrows were raised and a lot of question marks over the defence. Is that an area of concern for you?
It's not my desire to see signings. It comes from just an expectation rather than directly related to the pre-season results. It's not really too much to do with that. We've known our very good right backs injured, our very good centre halves injured. Probably need genuine competition for the goalkeeping department, if not a new number one. And we've discussed all this, probably striking back up as well, which I know we want to speak about. And yet we sign central midfielders and wingers. It's just that the strategy seems a bit off for me, and what I expected to happen hasn't happened. It still might happen, but yeah, underwhelmed so far rather than overtly panicky.
Yeah, I don't think you're alone there. James, we'll get into all the transfer talk shortly, but in terms of the Japanese tour, it has to be seen as a worthwhile exercise overall. 2 high-tempo games against decent opposition, bit of team bonding and plenty of time with Brendan Rodgers on the training pitch.
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking for results on pre-season tours, it's just the wrong thing. It's about seeing, I have to say, Daizen's been a wee bit of a revelation for me through the centre. I just never would have put that forward as an option for Celtic, and Rodgers is saying, aye, it is. And the only way you can find out is by trying different formations, seeing if the likes of Turnbull can do anything. Mikey Johnson, I'm sure, would have got plenty of minutes if he was fit. So it's all very worthwhile. I'm sure the marketing team have loved it, bringing in the dollars at the mobile Celtic shops and stuff. So raises the profile, gets some of the players that are from Japan out there and in front of their own home fans and stuff. Very, very worthwhile. The real work starts now, I suppose, in terms of, bringing in the signings. I suppose where you're at with is that we've had 2 years of like bang bang, there you go, there's your right back, there's your striker, and it's all done and dusted. This seems to be very, very methodical from Celtic, which is to be admired if it is eventually effective. So we've gone and done the sort of contracts out for the guys who want to extend. We've gone and got some, right, we're going to build you into a great player over the next 12, 18, 24 months. And then Nawrocki coming in, which looks imminent. That's us saying, here's your first team guys coming. So in the next week, 2 weeks, you backfill a goalie, probably a striker, which we'll come on to, maybe a left back. Then it could be just a really professional performance. So we just need to give it another couple of weeks and see where we're at.
I suppose could be is the optimal word at this moment in time, because while there's nothing happening, we're all guilty of it. You fill in the gaps yourself, don't you? And you start to worry and you start to project what might be the case. Just in terms of the tour stuff, Barry, you and I obviously covered the Gamba Osaka game yesterday or on Saturday, and there was a lot of drama after Wednesday's game about the results. 6-4, this is a shambles, Joe Hart's done, defence is a riot, all that kind of stuff. Do results in pre-season friendlies matter at all, a wee bit, or not at all?
A wee bit. I think it all comes down to where we are as supporters. I think the last time we seen them play before last week was obviously our cup final. It's a new start, it's a new era under Rodgers, and we're all just expecting everything just to continue as is. And when you kind of see a result like that where we're shitting goals, on paper it doesn't look great. As a supporter, you think...
Was that shipping goals?
Aye. Did you think I said something else there?
I did.
I'm sure Dave will beep it out. No, I just think that it's easy for us to get carried away when actually in the grand scheme of things, you look at over the course of the 2 games, he's changed his starting 11 twice in both games at half time. I think that this is ideally the best time for Rodgers to see, right, where I'm at with these players, who has a future, who could maybe step up, and who's definitely going to be a mainstay. I think that we seem to be in this little bit of worry, and I think that the Scottish media have a massive part to play in that as well. When we see all the signings happening across the way, people start to get itchy feet. They start to worry that where are our signings? We've signed quite a few players. We forget that.
If we'd signed what they've signed by now, our hair would be on fire. We'd be running about going bananas. But it's awful.
The point I'm trying to make though is that I think a lot of Celtic fans are expecting of marquee ready-made players to come into this team. We've not done that the last 2 seasons. No one knew of Jota, no one knew of Giakoumakis, no one knew of Hatate or Kyogo. I think that as a team, we just take our time. We just take our time. We'll get 6 weeks left in this transfer window as well. I think everyone's going to be okay, guys. I really do.
I take that point. I take that point, right? So I take that point around we didn't know the other players were going to be good until we arrived, and those that we have signed, like Satelio, Home, who I thought looked decent in the game, could very well be excellent signings in the players that we're all revering in a year's time. What's different now is we know we've got a considerable amount of funds because we told the stock exchange, so that's why we know. So therefore it puts us in a different position to bring in the ready-made players, probably in a different position than we've ever been before, to be quite frank. But we've still not done it yet. Now, I'm not saying we won't do it. I just thought we would have. It's nothing to do with the press. It's actually nothing to do with Rangers. I genuinely don't know. I just know they've signed somebody called Cyril. But for me, I would have thought we would have made a statement, not to the stock exchange, but to the fans and to Scottish football by saying, here is your ready-made, whether it be goalkeeper, centre-half, striker, even midfielder, or add to the winger roster, if you want to do that as well. I thought we would have done it. As yet, we haven't.
I think we will.
Doesn't mean we won't. I just thought we would have done it by now.
I think the market in it is completely different though as well.
I really do. The Saudi thing, I accept.
Well, not even along those lines, Miff. I think that if you're looking for a player that's got 100 appearances under their belt and they're showing signs that they can get away from the team that they're at, they want a new challenge. There's 4 or 5 different clubs looking at that kind of player. There really is. So I think Celtic they have to be clever about it. I wouldn't be surprised if we've probably just been priced out a few players as well.
And it's not even the ticket on signing the players. So the goalie that went to Fenerbahce, I think it was
9 million.
I think we could have afforded that.
Yeah.
It would have been a real statement. He's on 50 grand a week, and he's not. That's a real gamble for Celtic to go that for that kind of position. So we could have said, 9 million. There's 35 plus bonus, but they're going 50 grand a week. That puts us out.
And he's Croatia's number one. What's his name? Lewandowski, something like that.
Cool.
Totally forgot.
But the thing is, with a guy like that,
he didn't sign stuff him.
I forget him. We've spoken before though. We need to kind of get him before he's Croatia's number one, or just as he's breaking through. But we shop in such a funny market as Celtic. We can't. Generally, we cannot get the finished article. We can't afford the finished article. We can only get the guys that might become the finished article, and that's a tricky place to shop.
You can end up with a Jota, or you can end up with a Richter. It can go either way. But it's true though that is I always remember when we signed Richter, folks said Ajax don't sell good players to Celtic for £1 million, and how right they were. But those things, the market that we're in, I accept that. I accept. We have to sign the types of players that we have signed to develop them, to bring them on. I suppose they were my expectations, but they don't appear to be just my expectations. I think a lot of fans have kind of felt this would have been different. The transfer window would have been different. We would have married the efficiency under Ange and getting the business done early with a different profile of signing, and that's not quite happened. It's been the profile signing of development, and maybe some are first team ready. I think Tellio in particular is probably the one that I think would come in.
And
but when he's fit, of course. But yeah, let's see what the next few weeks bring. If the button's there, I'm just, for those that are listening, Spotify, iTunes or any other, the hand's hovering above the panic button, but it's not quite pressed down yet. No. I also like the look of the new guy, Forrest. He's quite good.
He's so new they're giving him a testimonial in a week's time.
He looks quite good, that right winger.
Quite
nippy.
Quite sharp.
Quite nippy, yeah.
You commented, Paddy, just if we want to stick on Forrest, he looked quite fit, quite lively. Listen, I think we all know where we're at with James Forrest, and we'll probably cover him a wee bit more next week because he's got his testimonial coming on the Tuesday, and good luck to him for all of that, well deserved. But is he, Paddy, now just a senior player and the kind of guy that's going to help the Marco Tellios and Yang if he comes in and the various other new guys?
I think we would probably all agree that's what his role was last season. I think he had so many niggly little injuries, but a fit James Forrest at the age of 31, he's still in the squad.
Yeah, I think so. Okay, let's take a look at what's coming up in this week's show. With Cameron Carter-Vickers still working on his rehab, Celtic look to have provided some backup in the centre-half department in the shape of 22-year-old Maik Nawrocki. Is that the right pronunciation, James?
Yes.
From Legia Warsaw. And we look at what his signing will mean to the defence now and moving forward. Elsewhere, Brendan Rodgers has confirmed that Kyogo continues to struggle with a shoulder issue which may require surgery. So where does that leave us in terms of striking options, and should backup be looked upon as a priority? Then it's time for this week's Path to Paradise feature as I try again to outsmart the three Celtic gurus sitting right here in front of me. And finally, following recent speculation, should Celtic stick or twist on the outstanding talent that is Reo Hatate? Okay lads, let's get the ball rolling by assessing what looks to be the latest addition to the defence with the news that Nawrocki is joining in a 5-year deal from Legia Warsaw. It seems Celtic have beaten off competition from Galatasaray for his signature, and that the 6'3" defender will be the latest to join the Brendan Rodgers revolution. James, what's your latest take on this one from the information available to us?
He looks like a find. So he's what come through Werder Bremen Academy, a couple of loan deals, and then signed for Legia. He seemed to play a lot on the right and could also play right back if required, and I thought that was quite confusing because the gap is on the left, and then you look a bit more detail, he can play with either foot, which is really interesting. The versatility that gives Rodgers, whether he's playing 4, 3 at the back, whatever it might be. He's a bit of a tank. He scores decent amount of goals for a centre half. He's fast, strong in the tackle. I think he's going to be a real talent for Celtic. They've been very patient on it, on that position, and they're not going to be wasting their time someone that's not going to cut the mustard. So I think he's a first team signing right out the bat.
And that in itself is interesting because we spoke in last week's show about the guys that have come in so far, Thiago Holm, Talio, the 2 lads from South Korea. They're all 21, 22, and we've just presumed that they're all kind of project signings or development players. Nawrocki's the same age, but you're right, James, he seems to just be a level above. He's got good experience, played a lot of games in the top division in Poland, played Europa League stuff. He actually played against Brendan Rodgers' Leicester in the Europa League in September 21, so he might have had eyes on him even from that early stage. But Miff, he does seem like someone who could potentially slot right in, particularly with CCV's current injury.
Yeah, and often we talk about the model that Celtic work to and the profile of signing, and that's where Nawrocki probably bucks that trend a bit because he's picked up that experience. He's played at Europa League level, and we know from signing Juranovic from Legia, they play often in Europe, so getting that experience at a young age and still having what Celtic would regard as a resale value if he comes and plays another a good 3 or 4 years for us, he'll still be a sellable asset, which means that we'll get back more than what we've invested in him. Great. But will he do the business, as James says? Has he got those attributes that we need at the back? And what we do need is we do need someone as dominant as Carter-Vickers. Very hard thing to find, but we need someone as dominant as him in his absence, because it has been shown that we do lack that leader in the centre of defence. I think Starfelt's done an admirable job, but it's just not quite the same as Carter-Vickers. So it really needs reinforced, it needs strengthened, and it's great to see us signing in a position that we really, really need.
Agreed. Paddy, it seems that he spoke with Josip Juranovic ahead of committing to the deal, and it's good to hear that ex-players continue to speak positively about their experiences at the club. And at 22 years of age, he's someone that will still be developing to an extent, but would your gut feeling be that he's here to replace someone like Karl Starfelt, or more that he's simply in to add more competition to that area of the squad?
First and foremost for me, it'll be to add more competition. I think obviously we see that Carter-Vickers is still out at the moment. We don't know.
He's started back training, full training.
That's
good.
Positive news that him and Ralston seem to be nearing full training, which is great.
I just think that a player like that coming in ready-made is brilliant for our centre halves. But as I said to you yesterday, Tino, we look at last season, we never had a full season of Starfelt and Carter-Vickers through injury at the very early stages of the season. And I think that's massive for us, having those players ready to come in. We hoped that we were going to get something from Maurice Jens last year. We didn't get that. We didn't really see enough to make us kind of want to make anything permanent there. This guy, for me, I think is going to be knocking at the door more. I think he'll get more opportunity than what Jens maybe did as well. And it's great. It keeps our 2 starting centre halves on their toes. A lot are very, very quick to dismiss Starfelt. Very quick. But I think 2 years, no defeat alongside Carter-Vickers. It's his jersey at the beginning of the season, in my opinion.
Just can I say something on that? It's not really about the defence part of Starfelt and Vickers. It's the speed of coming out. And if Starfelt's having to get it on his right from a left-hand side position, you're slightly slower than when we break on the right. And I include when Starfelt's on the right, it's not his fault he's been playing the left. That's my issue, is getting out of defence quicker with a left-footed player. So I think that's the challenge we've got.
Well, I've nearly broke our scoring record last season, though. So I don't know, what you want.
It's Europe you're looking at. It's things like that,
I suppose it's when you're assessing Carl Starfelt, you've got to look at it in two ways. I think as a defender, if you look at the mistakes that he's made, inverted commas, the mistakes he's made, they all come from him trying to play ball. It's when he comes out of defence and he fluffs his lines and he's not quite quick enough. We've seen an example, I know it was a friendly on Wednesday, where he just made an arse out, basically. Didn't know whether he stick or twist, and he ended up doing neither. But in terms of defence, he's absolutely solid. But that's the question, James. Is that enough at Celtic? And is that enough in an attacking team that Brendan Rodgers is clearly trying to build? And let's be honest, if we're trying to build something that's suitable for Europe, you talk about levelling up for the Champions League, are we going to be enough with Carl Starfelt in terms of what he brings in an offensive mode? Or do we need someone that can play ball just a wee bit better, a wee bit sharper?
Again, I would say that it's fairly untested. I mean, we look at last season's campaign, the majority of our games was Jens and Welsh, and I just think that it's I'm not trying to say that we don't try and progress. I think this is a brilliant signing. It's keeping those two centre halves on their toes 100%. I just think that, it doesn't rock the boat entirely. I don't see enough from Starfelt that makes me think, no, you're going to be on the bench next season. I don't think that's the case for him at all.
And credit to Starfelt that, certainly during Ange's time, we brought in Moritz Jens, we brought in Kobayashi. None of the two of them, despite a lot of our suggestions, none of the two of them could even get near nudging him out the team. So he's certainly seen off those two challenges. And he'll rise to a challenge with Nawrocki as well. I think Starfelt's a good pro. What is he now, 26, maybe 27? And he'll know that at a club like Celtic, this is how it goes. You can never rest on your laurels, and he'll be kept on his toes, as you say, Paddy. So it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out once CCV's fit, because at the moment it might just be Nawrocki and Starfelt together. That makes sense. What happens when CCV, easy for me to say, comes back in and rightfully takes his shot? We spoke last week about the dangers of the squad becoming bloated, and that's only going to be added to as we continue to bring new players in. What does Nawrocki's signing mean for the likes of Yuki Kobayashi and Stephen Welsh? I know Kobayashi picked up his knock, he's injured on Wednesday night, but those two lads very quickly have just become periphery players at Celtic.
Yeah, and I think the Welsh always kind of has been. And to be fair, Kobayashi became so underage towards the end. He was available for selection, had a fairly indifferent game at Ibrox, and then was eased out as a part of that. I wouldn't completely give up on him, but the problem with centre halves is they need game time, and if you're just sitting cooling your heels on the bench, not getting on the pitch and playing 5-6 games in a row with a steady partner, then I don't think you're really being judged to good effect. So it's one of those positions where, unless you're going to get a run of games, I understand we want to keep Welsh for the homegrown players for the Champions League, but you can't hold a lad's career back for that. He's probably got to need to go and spread his wings.
Let him go, man.
At the very least, get him out on a loan so he can go and play regularly.
We knocked back bids from Italy. I mean, that could be great for his career, the same as a lot of other Scottish boys have done. Go out there and really flourish. I think he's a talent that's just not quite good enough for us, but could really thrive elsewhere. I think it's not really fair to Celtic to hold on to him if they're not going to play him, and we shouldn't play him.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree. I like Stephen Welsh a lot. I think he's a very honest player as well, but and you say selfish from the club, and it might be the right term, but Celtic do need to, and all clubs need to meet this UEFA Champions League squad profile. You need to have so many homegrown players, and if they've signed Stephen Welsh on a whatever contract he's on just now, he's maybe got a couple of years to run, then they maybe just do need to hold him. It'd be nice in a perfect scenario to say, on you go Stephen, go and flourish in Italy, but actually Celtic need to be clever about who they put in this squad. There's a requirement by UEFA to have certain homegrown talents.
I'd rather have a player short in the squad rather than that.
It's mismanagement if they're at that position. Yeah.
It's also prevaricating the rules. The rules are there to get those guys in the team actually playing football, and he's not going to be playing football. No. So,
what's the alternative if it's not Stephen Welsh? Should he slot in just another Scottish lad that's playing at Celtic?
Was that part of?
Yeah, he's trained.
The setup.
Home trained.
But was he part of the squad last year? the Champions League squad?
probably
I
not.
don't know.
I don't
Probably not.
That could be the
He will
replacement.
be. Yeah.
We'll maybe review that in the coming weeks. So we'll have a Champions League draw to look forward to in the not too distant future, and we'll start to gear more towards Europe. James, you've always had this plan for Europe gearing up, so we'll certainly spend some time
The
on
only
that
Celtic fan that does.
in the weeks ahead.
Heard it here first.
If we make no further additions to the defence, I'll ask this to you, James. Would you be happy to go into the season, and more specifically the Champions League campaign, with the options we currently have? Keeping in mind that, as we touched on there, CCV and Ralston are on their way back. They seem to have resumed full training more or less. A wee bit longer for Alistair Johnson. So, taking all that into consideration, adding Nawrocki to the mix, where do you stand?
Left back's weak. And I don't mean Greg Taylor, I just mean you haven't got enough cover in there, and I don't think you have the level we need. I hope Taylor can keep developing as he has done the last 12, 24 months. Bernabe's not that cover. He's a right back / striker / whatever.
He's a right wing goal scorer type.
Whatever he wants to be.
What was he doing up there?
Amazing. Just amazing.
He passed that to me.
Watch this.
Me and Paddy covered that one. A, what was he doing in the right back position in the first place? B,
Super inversion.
what was it? He tried to curl it with the outside of his left foot and it went the other way. I think he had his boots on the wrong feet and then chased his own through ball. It was just
But he
utter nonsense.
He jumped up in frustration and went, I can get that. And he tailed away. So, wherever Bernabe is going to be, I don't think it's left back, and let's be straight, not right back either, but somewhere further up kind of thing. So I would need cover at left back. I think with the defenders, if we let Welsh go, you're looking at Nawrocki, Kobayashi on the left, and Starfelt CCV on the right, and you've got Ralston and Johnson at right back. I'm just about okay with that if that's where it lands, but the left back needs work.
Yeah, so maybe one solid addition that can play in left back. You lads similar minded or any difference, I thought?
I would agree on the left back, but again, we don't currently have any fit right backs either. That worries me.
It might be Nawrocki.
Think so.
Initially, yeah.
He can slot over there, and we know that Awata has played there, but I'm not sure if that's a long term solution.
No, I seen him doing some very non-right backy tackles yesterday. Slammed a guy.
Anyway, seems there's maybe a further addition. So just to close things out on Nawrocki, can we just call him Rocky, Paddy? Is that
Go
easier?
for it.
Right, so we'll set the ball on. So just to sign Nawrocki, overall pleased with that and a good addition as we start to head towards the season.
Yeah, I think so. I'm hopeful that this is a sign of things to come, that we keep bringing these players in after maybe 2 years of us having a partnership of Carter-Vickers and Starfelt. We're always just bringing someone else in that's going to test them. I think that's massive for us as a club. I want to see that happen in all positions, to be honest. Keeps things fresh. We can then see, who's going to step up, or who actually is ran their course at Celtic. So it's a good signing.
Yeah, all round seems to be a good bit of business. Elsewhere, it's been reported at the end of the Japanese tour that Kyogo Furuhashi continues to struggle with the shoulder issues that's hampered him at different times during his 2 years in Glasgow so far. Brendan Rodgers is quoted as saying that it probably won't be totally right until he has an operation on it, but he then went on to say that the option of surgery will be totally down to the player himself. Kyogo himself seems to be playing it down, and he said, "There's nothing to get better or worse. It's fine. I'm on the pitch, and when you see the game, you'll see how it is." Miff, I think what is clear, despite the kind of different quotes there, is that he's definitely not 100% at this moment in time. So how much of a concern is that with the league campaign about to get underway and a tough Champions League campaign also on the horizon?
Well, it's not ideal because we've seen last season how quickly it can change. A fairly innocuous tackle meant it was taken off, and what at that point was probably our most important game of the season. So living with that jeopardy isn't great, but you could go back and say, well, that can happen at any moment in any game where something can happen where somebody has to be substituted. But it's a known problem that he has, and some of the darker forces in the SPL knowing that he has that problem will no
Test
doubt
it out.
try and play on that.
I think that's already happened.
Yeah, I've seen it happen a few times.
Clothesline stuff.
Clothesline stuff, also the grabbing
The
in
pulling
that
it,
particular
aye.
arm as well. So yeah, just it's not ideal, but I think it just highlights we're maybe a wee bit light on number nines if Kyogo were to be injured.
And on that, Paddy, so it seems that Brendan Rodgers really sees Daizen Maeda as a striker rather than a winger, and he used him to good effect there in Japan. What do you think of him in that position first of all, and can he be a genuine contender for Kyogo's striking throne?
I don't think he takes the throne. I just think it's a great option. I really do. I think back to the World Cup, and he pushed Japan through quite a lot of their games with the games that he was playing. He will miss an abundance of chances, kind of what we were saying yesterday, but he just brushes himself down and just gets on with it. And that mentality and that position, I'm all right with that. It kind of reminds me a little bit of Samaras, just in the sense that, you know, he would be like 1 yard out, still managed to miss, but then he would score an absolute worldie about 10 minutes later. I just think that it's a great option for us to have. I'd still like to think that we would go and sign a competitive striker.
Yeah. James, we've seen Kyogo deployed in a couple of positions out with centre forward, certainly in the last couple of games in Japan, but we've also seen it during his early days. Remember his debut against Hearts, he came on in the left wing position. He played at Ibrox in left wing with Edward through the centre. And I just think anywhere out with number 9 for Kyogo, he's nowhere near as effective. It's not his game.
He's a number 9 all day, and that's all. And he's very, very good at it. I seen him yesterday, and he was floating about the kind of right hand side of the halfway line. I was like, what are you doing out there? Just get in. But then O was on at the time as well. So a few times last year I actually played O and Kyogo together. It's really ineffective. So I just don't like it. I think you need to have, we could end up quite bloated, because I agree with Paddy. I think we need to sign a number 9, but then you've got Daizen not as a number 9, but Rodgers is saying I'm going to play him there when I get the opportunity to, or if Kyogo's not playing. You've got Kyogo himself, you've got O, development player for me, and I think we need maybe someone in the kind of mould of Rocky in a striker capacity. 22, done a wee bit, got a bit of space to grow, but can deliver for us right away as well. That would be the ideal kind of signing for me there. So
maybe just a wee bit more experienced than someone who's maybe done it for a couple of seasons and has a proven track record.
Yep.
We've also mentioned it a couple of times, but it's just really important to highlight it, that that Asian Cup is coming up. It's the 12th of January to the 10th of February, and it could genuinely see us without all 3 of our current strikers, Kyogo, Maeda and O, who will all have ambitions to go there with Japan and South Korea respectively. So surely, Miff, on that basis alone, we need to be looking at bringing another striker into the mix.
Yeah, you'd think so. I quite like the look of O. I know not everybody's sold on him, but I think there's really the kind of basic tools there to be working with. He's a big, strong, powerful player. Very different type to what we already have. Still a bit raw, but I think just, he could be doing with more games. Whether he's got to get them with us next season or not is probably the biggest factor. But yeah, for all those factors that you mentioned around the Asian Cup and more, and someone a bit more tried and tested coming in, I think we do need that for the Champions League. When you need a goal, you need someone that's knows how to find the back of the net. So it would be my hope that we would still strengthen there, but it just remains to be seen. We've not really been linked to any strikers at all, have we? It's been very quiet.
Yeah, we weren't linked with Rocky. Just right out there.
What I would say, based on what we've covered there, Kyogo's niggle injury, the Asian Cup, the maybe not with Daizen Maeda, the fact that O's still a bit raw. Paddy, I'd go as far to say that getting a new number 9 should be our number 1 priority at this moment in
time. I can agree with you on it. I think that January is a massive month. If we lose those players, the big factor is that what we need to think about is that what wingers are we bringing in too. I think we maybe still a little bit light on the right hand side, and I just think that we're speaking about several positions in this show today, guys. I think that just shows you that there is a little bit of a want, a little bit of a worry for a few areas in the team. I still think that the team are. I still think as a club we're planning for this. I still think that, as James just said, we're keeping our cards very close to our chest, and that's something that will continue from when Ange's came in. And I just think that we can't just go and clutch at anyone and just say, right, you'll do. I don't think it'll be a case of that. I think it has to fit, it has to work. It's important that we get something in though. It could be that we wait to January for that. It could. I'm not saying that they will, but it could be. Again, we just don't know what market we're up against now. We really don't.
I think if we sign a striker and we do nothing else, which I think we should sign other players, but if we only signed a top-notch striker, we'd probably be okay.
And that gets us to my next question, James. So number 9 is the absolute priority for me. Paddy, you're maybe somewhere in between. Is that your number 1 position at this moment in time?
Yeah, and more in the old mould, a physical, tall, fast striker, not as much as Daizen and Kyogo. We've got that kind of covered, And
important that they don't qualify to play for the Asian Cup.
100%.
Someone that can play out with that tournament. Miff, what's your priority? Is it a striker, or have you got somewhere else identified? I know you like to be different.
No, I'd say, especially with the Kyogo news, a wee bit of noise around it. So I would say yes, another striker would be, and also the Asian Cup factor as well, should be a priority. But I'm like I'd mentioned previously, I'm nervy about the right back, and Johnson potentially been out for a prolonged time. Ralston being the only available right back, and I know you've said Nawrocki could come in and cover there. He could argue the same at left back if he can play with both feet. But if he's been signed as a centre half, I'd like, you know,
let's use him where he's built for.
Then I think right back as well would be, right or left back, to be honest with you, because if the same point stands for left back as right back. If Nawrocki's got to be signed as a centre half, is that you need cover on either. But you mentioned the squad getting bloated, and you're now getting to that point. You're saying, right, well, there's this pool of players that just aren't going to get anywhere near the squad, and maybe Kobayashi and Iwata are part of that.
Maybe.
You know, guys who we thought were just going to be probably regular players for us. Iwata just doesn't really seem to be in the picture in midfield. But I mean, I'm not writing them off or anything like that. I'm just saying it's funny how things are developing.
I think they're both still in there.
Probably, but we'll get more of an idea. So we're in Dublin on Saturday to play Wolves, and then we've got James Forrest game against Bilbao on the Tuesday. And I think the team lineups for those two games will give us more of an indication as to where those guys are. Read the same for guys like Turnbull, who started the other day, might not start on those ones. And you'll get an idea, you know, will he go Taylor or Bernabé at left back, you know, and various other. Haksabanovic, Paddy and I questioned his attitude at this moment in time. No doubt in the talent. Has he got the desire and the bit between his teeth? Not sure. He looks a wee bit
Come on,
Charlie Showbiz.
Come on, second half yesterday, and the feet, you know, the talent is there. He's fast feet and stuff, and then he just gets a wee bit disinterested.
Yep.
You know, we saw it at some points, maybe halfway through the season last season, and we just went, nah. You know, that attitude, particularly at the time under Ange Postecoglou, you're like, you know, last 10 minutes here. So he's got the opportunity. It's all there for him, but he's got to have a serious change in attitude to make it.
Can see the lad's a player, but I tend to agree. He's had a lot of chances. There's some flashes of absolute brilliance, but it just doesn't seem to be that desire to do it repeatedly.
The big annoyance is you can clearly see the talent, and you can see that for so many of the players that we've questioned, you know, in terms of their future. Turnbull, real talent. Mikey Johnson, real talent. Haksabanovic, real talent. But talent's not enough, Paddy. We spoke about it when we covered the Osaka game. It's not enough just to be a good player. At any club, not just Celtic, any club in the modern era, you need to have so much more that goes with it. You need to have that desire, that work rate, that commitment, that willingness to learn, that willingness to be coached. And yeah, there's maybe a few question marks over Haksabanovic and one or two others. One guy who's definitely not shown any of those good attributes is Albion Ajeti, who's basically hunkered down, and he's just said, "I'll take your 12-month salary, Celtic."
They tried to cut him, didn't they?
There was a suggestion that Celtic would pay him up early and, you know, shake hands, and he says, "Nope, I'll stick with I don't know what he's on, 25 grand, something like that."
Yeah.
And he's sitting tight. And you could debate that further. Do you fault him as a guy, or is that Celtic's fault for giving a 4-year deal? Is it a 4-year deal to a guy who's just not cutting it? It's just football, isn't it, Miff? You can see his side of things and you can see Celtic's side.
Absolutely. It's bad.
Yeah.
It's a really, really bad sign.
Just needs right off.
Given that Kyogo's struggling a bit with the shoulder, did we give the double A a chance to redeem himself? Slot him back in. The final point I'd like to make, though, just in the striking option. So obviously we've debated Daizen Maeda and what he's currently doing. You know, Rodgers is playing him through the middle, but I don't like any player to be that hybrid player. I sometimes play winger, I sometimes play striker. I call it the kind of Phil Neville scenario, where he suffered throughout his career for just having no real position. Sometimes he was right back, sometimes he was centre mid, sometimes he was centre half, and ultimately ended up just sitting on the bench for various clubs between United and Everton. And I think you're in danger of a guy, you either just say I'm a striker or I'm a winger or I'm a fullback or whatever, or nothing at all. I just don't like, you know, the suggestion at times is, oh, bad I can play through the middle. Well, he can, but it's not his strong point. His strong point has been a wide man. Daizen can play through the middle, but is it his, you know, favoured position? So
I think that is, though. I actually think it is his favourite position.
Maeda's.
And just made him a left winger.
Yes.
But I don't like the prospect of signing someone who can, you know, Ange talked about these players that are versatile. I'm not into that. I just sign a striker to be striker, a centre mid to be centre mid, and so on. Square holes and square pegs.
He's out the door a month and you disagree.
I'm not brave enough to say that.
Just right off his football philosophy.
He'd never have said that. Every fan
Say it
says,
to my
"Oh,
face."
Ange, hiya, love you."
When I used to see him at the fan media stuff, it was, "Excuse me, Mr. Postecoglou."
I think you'll find Brendan Rodgers has Daizen Maeda as his super sub, and he'll play as required for what's required during the game. Right, and he joins as a bit of a striker, he joins as a winger, and it'd be a brilliant option to have off the bench.
how happy would Maeda to be super sub?
Maeda's happy with everything.
He's got an interesting mindset, hasn't he, Paddy? We spoke about that as well. Just he makes mistakes, he has a loose touch, it ball runs under his foot. Doesn't matter. Just washes his face and starts again. But no, I don't think Ange always played him in the big games. Ange played him in Europe, he played him against Rangers, played him in cup finals. And I'm not sure, as a Japan international as well, I'm not sure he'd be happy to be bit part or back up to Kyogo or anyone. So going to be really interesting to see what happens. Fingers crossed with the Kyogo situation. Hopefully, it's nothing major, but it looks like a wee bit of a doubt over his shoulder. So we'll need to see. Any final comments before we move on from this one?
No final comments from me other than I agree with Paddy. I think Maeda's favourite position is centre forward.
Yeah, it looks like he'll get a chance there moving forward. So let's see how it plays out. Okay, it's now time for our Path to Paradise feature, where each week I'll tell you the clubs our player has played for before his move to Celtic, and we'll also name any teams he then went to after he left, and all you need to do is name the player in question. So far so good for the lads, with Glenn Loovens, Johnny Hayes and Gary Caldwell being the answers over the last 3 weeks. But
Napper.
Well, the boys be able to name the famous Excel
A sniper's dream
from this week's clues. Lads, are you ready for this week's Path to Paradise?
Yes.
Always.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, here we go. Deportivo La Coruña. Sit tight on your answers. Airdrie. What a move that is.
Yeah.
Spain to
We've
Airdrie.
all got it.
Livingston.
Oh, aye.
Celtic.
Aye.
Oh dear.
Dundee
Come
United.
on.
That's a gimme.
Come on, look. Have a wee think, although I think you've got it, and I'll come back to you in just a moment. While the lads are trying to work that one out, I want to let you know about Celtic 321, which is our new weekly email that we send out completely free every Tuesday. Celtic 321 is a punchy roundup of the most important Celtic news that week. It takes less than 2 minutes to read and includes 3 articles, 2 videos and 1 quote from the week in Celtic. If you're really quick, you'll be able to get signed up in time for this week's edition, and to do so, just visit our website where you'll see the sign up options in the homepage, or alternatively, just click the link that we've included in the show notes for this episode. And remember, you can explore Celtic 321 and all of our additional content, including the Celtic Exchange Plus, right now at thecelticexchange.com. Who's the nominated guy to give her the answer? Is it you, Paddy?
No. We'll get an answer each.
No, so you kidding me on? How does that work out? How's that fair? Are you the team
I
captain?
think
Miff?
he's trying to trick us.
Yes.
I do.
I think because it could be one or two.
You've
Could
got
be one or two.
You've got one answer and one
No,
answer.
no,
only.
no, no,
wait a
no,
minute.
no, no, no,
Wait a
no.
minute.
Aye.
No, it's one or two.
I've only got one answer, right? I've only got one shot at this. So
We
you
only
only
got
get
No
one shot.
way. Just change the rules as we go, man.
No
That's
chance.
how it's been going for the last couple of years.
No chance.
Paddy, are you the nominated answer
Go
giver?
for it, Paddy. Go for it.
I'm going to say Brotto. Yeah. I thought you were trying to trick us.
We'll get that beeped out as well. So,
So the path to paradise is now been renamed the Mythway.
The myth.
That's the first one you've got.
Away you go. Away you
What else did you get?
Away you go. Who did I get? I got the first one.
No, it was Paddy.
What? No, I did get the first one, didn't I? Did I get the first ever?
Who's the
Path
first
to
one?
Paradise.
first one was Glenn Loovens. Miff got that.
I got the other two.
Like that.
You lads get Johnny Hayes, and then I think you got Caldwell last week.
I was no,
I
no.
get Caldwell.
He got cold.
I
What
think
was
Johnny-
what was Brotto's path?
Brotto
So
was-
wrong answer, but
Airdrie and Livingston as well, I'm sure.
is the route from Spain and Airdrie quite a commonly tread path for
It was
football?
the Steve
when-
Armstrong
No,
wasn't it?
Baldy
Steve
Archibald.
Archibald, sorry.
Archibaldi.
Archibaldi.
Aye.
I didn't know a lot of ballers went from La Liga to Airdrie to Inserta.
They were
was
going,
that?
They didn't.
they've got promoted and weren't allowed in the league, remember?
The stadium?
Stadium, aye.
Anyway, I thought that was an easy one. I think you thought it was an easy one.
yeah.
So I'll dig deeper. I'll give you a quick one, right? We were kind of working on one just earlier in the week. Straight answer: Celtic, Chelsea, no other clubs. Who have you got?
Tom Boyd.
He went the other way after
Nice.
Motherwell and all that
Marino.
stuff. Just Celtic, then Chelsea. Started at Celtic, went to Chelsea.
And that was it.
Aye. Goes back a few years as well. Here's another clue. He managed Celtic.
Davy Hay.
Davy Hay is correct.
Well done.
It's good on a bit. Is that too old?
Don't look back in
No,
anger.
no,
Davy.
did you just make that up? All right.
Anyway, we'll test out the water.
It was
with-
either
with
Davy or
different
Paul
eras.
McStay, wasn't it?
Well, no. Paul McStay didn't play with Chelsea.
No. I'm saying
For your
don't
wee
look back
song?
in anger. Aye.
Okay, let's move on. Okay, we're going to close out this week's show by looking at the current situation surrounding Reo Hatate, a player who's been an absolute standout since his arrival at Celtic Park in January of 2022. Following the game against Gamba Osaka in Japan, some headlines materialised linking him with a move to the English Premier League. And in truth, there's nothing controversial about what Hatate said in reply. But before we get to that, what do you think of his situation overall, Paddy, and his importance to this current Celtic side?
After McGregor, he's our best player in the club, in my opinion. And I know everyone will be thinking about Kyogo there as well, but I just think he's massive for us. Great player.
Is it the player with the most potential, given his age, his profile, the level he's playing at?
Yeah, I would love to see him sign a new deal. I would.
Does it concern you that he's not, when the likes of McGregor has, Kyogo has, Maeda has?
It does a little bit. I think that this might come down to, if we get him on a new deal, do we price him out of that move to the Premier League? Do a lot of the teams just still think that he's maybe not the finished article, and he gets another season here to get to that level, and another year off his contract. It works out well for him, and it works out well for the Premier League teams. So Celtic need to be clever here.
We do, but we hold the cards. So he's 25 years of age, but he's contracted until May of 2026. So you're just a bit short of 3 years from now, James. So Celtic are in a strong position, you know, regarding what Hatate wants to do. I've no doubt he's got ambitions, and that's fine, you know. But while he's here, he's working hard, he's performing, he's playing at a top level. But if a big offer comes in, Celtic do hold all the cards.
Yeah, it's more, you know, and Rodgers is quite open with this to players. You know, where do you want to get to? What's your ambition? Because, you know, I can work with you on that path, and we know where we sit in, you know, football's line. You know, we're not at the top of it, and we can help players get their moves to wherever it is in Europe or EPL or whatever. So it just might be, if you want to sign a new deal, yeah, it'll be good for us because we might command a higher fee, but you'll get better dough on the way. He's probably on fairly light dough given, you know, the profile he came in from, so he could earn more money on the way to ending up in the same position this time next year. I think we've got one more year left of Hatate, and we better enjoy it because he's a real talent. He looks lean. He looks to be working hard outside of what, you know, pre-season has been doing. Looks like he's been keeping himself fit through close season. I think he's a big part of Rodgers' plans, and if he was to go in this transfer window, it would be quite disruptive because we're not really planning for him going.
I think it'd be a huge blow to lose him at this moment in time. Here's the quotes from Hatate when he was asked about any ambitions he has to play in England. He says, if I can take on a challenge, I want to. There are things I can't do anything about, but when I lose my ambition, I'm finished as a player, and that's a natural thing for a player. If I think those comments, you know, some bits can maybe get lost in translation, and I had an arse at the start of the quote as well, so that might get lost, but the comments are pretty fair game, aren't they? And it's hardly you'll have seen some people spin on it, you know, Hatate begging for a move to the Premier League and stuff of that nature.
In my Celtic hell.
Yeah, so it's so it's hardly the cry for help that someone making it out to be, is it? But it's pretty fair comment.
Listen, James is quite right to highlight where we are in the food chain, because that is the reality of supporting modern day Celtic. We don't support the Celtic of our forefathers who conquered Europe and were seen as the place to be. That said, when it comes to Hatate, I believe we have I might get shot down for this, and I might be proved wrong, but I think we've got a genuine world-class talent in our hands. I can barely remember a player who's excited me so much and who I love watching so much as Hatate playing for Celtic, the way he addresses the ball, the way he receives the ball, and even in those friendlies, it's some of the guys chasing shadows that were trying to mark him, trying to press him high up the pitch, and he's just like, nah mate, no the day. And this guy, I believe, last season played at 50%. I don't know what the key is to unlock that. I think Ange got close to it. I think he just needs to play a bit angrier sometimes. He's so laid back. He could dominate games more if he wanted to. A lot of the time he does just rotate the ball when you think he could drive with the ball, and he's got great skill and he's got such great vision. I just love him. My worry is that some scout somewhere sitting watching him and loves him just as much as I do, and will go and spend the money on him. Because if I think you look at his body of work with Celtic, if you look at our Champions League campaign, the bravery he showed in that campaign on the ball when, you know, maybe results weren't going our way, performances you could argue did, results didn't. He is at the heart of everything good that we do, and he's just such a brilliant player. I hope he stays for the length of his contract, to be quite honest with you. I agree with James as well. I think physically we need to remember that he hasn't had the same physical training as many players who have played football and been in academies since they've been 14, 15 years old. He was a university player who then made it professional, you know, having another proper pre-season with Celtic under someone like Rodgers, who's really, really big on that, very meticulous on that, is is interesting in itself, because if that could unlock another 20-30% out of Ryo Hatate, then we're in for a treat this season. The guy is an absolute baller.
Yeah, part of what makes him such a talented player, Paddy, is he's a natural right footer, and he's got a brilliant strike on goal, which we've seen very early in his Celtic career with that goal against Hearts and then a couple against Rangers, which was nice. But he's got a real two-footedness about him, which makes him almost a complete central midfielder, because he can spin out and go the other direction at the drop of a hat, and he's just very clever on the ball, and he uses his body very well. He doesn't seem to get caught up in too many of the 50-50s. He seems to play around that, and he's just such a versatile player. But what's your own hopes for Rio, if we do hold on to him? What's your own hopes for the season ahead, and realistically, when do you think he may go on to make his move?
Yeah, I think he's a massive player for us. I think we're talking about the ability on the ball. Off the ball, he's incredible. He takes a full scan of everything around him before he even receives it. So he just knows what his next move's going to be. I remember the goal he scored against Aberdeen, just some of the movement leading up to that, and he just made it look effortless, and just making his way into the box, started the play, finished the play. He's huge for us. He's going to be a huge player for us this season. I don't think he goes this summer. I think we would have probably have heard by now, or I think a team would have came looking for him by now. I don't think Premier League teams, when they're going into that market, they know what the negotiations are like with Celtic. Celtic will rarely say no if the price is right. And I just think that we would have known by now if someone was after Hatate this summer. I will not come on this show again if he goes, because I'll be sorry about it. But I just don't think. I think we'd know by now. I think we get one more season out of him, and I think he goes on.
There's another huge bonus in there that we've just signed someone in Odin Thiago Holm, who plays in a similar position, maybe slightly deeper line. And Brendan Rodgers shirked him for taking the easy option against Osaka. He went back a couple of too many times, played it safe. And listen, it's his Celtic debut. His priority at that time was probably don't give the ball away, play it safe, be quite cautious. But Rodgers doesn't want that, and rightfully so moving forward. He wants guys to be adventurous, to make the forward pass, to make the through ball. And I think Thiago Holm will look on to Ryo Hatate, who's only a couple of years older than him, and say this guy's doing all the right things. He's left, he's right, he's in and out, he can play further forward, he links things up, he scores goals. And I think, he's, as I say, there's not too much of a difference age-wise, but I think Hatate could be a huge mentor, James, for somebody like Thiago Holm and various other young midfielders around the side.
Yeah, my initial taking home was a good bit more defensive, or a bit box-to-box, I suppose, but not quite as creative as Rio. But not to say that can't develop under the right tutelage and stuff. So, yeah, I mean, we've got young players in there like we do. Having someone slightly ahead of them in their career progress can only be a good thing to learn from. And that's all part of the model as well.
If a crazy bid comes in this summer for Ryo Hatate, and I'm talking Jota money or something like that, should Celtic do all they can to resist it, given, as I've said, he's contracted till May 2026? Should we just do all we can to knock back any bids? And just how important is he to what Brendan Rodgers is trying to build?
I think that all comes down to the player. I'm still heavily burned by what went on in the 10th season and the players who stayed but didn't then give their all to
were kept rather than stayed.
Yes.
Lennon wanted them out.
Yep. So that makes life difficult if you've got someone like that round about the squad. If ultimately the player's desire is to leave, then I think you let him leave, especially somebody like Hatate, because he's getting into his third season. He has delivered for us, absolutely no doubt about that. But I think the really, really intriguing thing, he's just got so much potential to kick on. I think there's another huge chunk improvement to come out of him, and what excites me is if he can achieve that at Celtic, it's just going to be an absolute joy to watch. I would love him. I think he will stay for this season. I agree with Paddy. I think he will. I certainly hope he will. But my hope also is that he improves so much that he becomes almost impossible to keep, and that will only mean good things for us.
Mm-hmm. And everybody wins out of that. I hope this section isn't construed as stupid podcasters try to punt Ryo Hatate kind of scenario, because it's far from that. No. We recognise the talent. Of course he's going to be interesting to scout. Smith's right. If anyone watches him, you can't fail to see a player there. And it's just a case of whether Celtic can hold on to him for that bit longer, continue to develop him and get the best out of him for the season ahead. Paddy, any final comments before we move on from Ryo Hatate?
I would love to see another level reached this season from him. I think that kind of what James is hitting on, he is looking a little bit sharper, a little bit more leaner. and I think that we've seen several games under Ange last season and the season before where Hatate could sometimes just drop out the game or sometimes have a little lapse in concentration. I always think back to that St Johnstone game where we were very comfortable and he gave the ball away. He knows himself what he needs to do for this season, and if he does that, he gets himself a great move next year.
He also got Callum McGregor sent off in season 1, didn't he? Was that a short pass against Motherwell? McGregor had to take the guy out and take the red card. The last point actually on Hatate, and Paddy and I discussed it after the Osaka game. We know that Ange would always do his rotations on 60 minutes, three guys in, 3 guys out, more or less every time. 60% of the time, he'd done it every time. And
that doesn't make sense.
But we often seen Hatate sacrificed at that moment in time, and me and Paddy were discussing it, and I'd be keen to hear what you lads think about the exciting prospect of a 90-minute Rio Hatate. He would always take Hatate off, he would often take Kyogo off and maybe an O'Reilly or a winger or something like that. I really want to see the best players on the park for the longest period of time, and it's exciting to see that he could find himself on for 80, 90 plus minutes, James, and that in itself must allow him to kick on as a player. It's actually quite unnatural for a guy to always just play hours, and I think he was one of the most sub players at Celtic during Ange's reign.
Aye.
I think the stats show that, so it'd be exciting to see him for a full 90, won't it?
If his engine's up to that level, I think it's been developing, but his first season certainly he was absolutely spent, having played a season in Japan and then came to ourselves. I don't see him, when he is getting taken off, you can see the energy starting to wane, and I know it's a wee bit kind of formulaic. Ange would take him off whether he's waning or not. That's just the time he would take him off, and he's one of the guys he would change on 60. So it depends. It looks, as we both said, that his fitness levels are up. If they're up to a point where he can go 80 or 90, 70 minutes, whatever, then I'm all for. You always want to keep your baller players on the park, the guys that can do something out of nothing, and he's one of them. So if his engine is up to it, I'd love to see it.
Yeah, I think we've all agreed he's looking trimmer, leaner, more powerful and all of that. So if we can start to see that 90-minute Rio Hatate, could be a really exciting time ahead. Okay, let's move on to some final pieces of news now as we start to close out the show. So as we know, Celtic will play Wolves now in Dublin on Saturday coming. That's the 29th of July. And that's one to look forward to at the Aviva Stadium. As always, and as with the games in Japan, we'll be covering that one with an additional episode on the Celtic Exchange Plus. If you aren't already signed up to the Celtic Exchange Plus, you can do so right now via our website at thecelticexchange.com. Liam Shaw, he's made a season-long loan move to Wigan. The writing's on the wall there, Paddy. I think his time is up, and we didn't see any of him on tour. We've not seen much of Uragide, and I think some guys of that ilk will also move on. We touched on Albion Ajeti, but it looks like he's digging his heels in on the last 12 months of his probably lucrative Celtic contract, and that's just the way it goes. Miff, you mentioned earlier on that the home strip has really grown on you. So despite the speculation, now that you see it on the players, so we've seen it for the first time on Wednesday, it really looks quite impressive, and a lot of people have come full circle on that. So Miff, any thoughts on any of those updates?
Shaw, to be expected. I think that's his level. Ajeti, can't I really blame him?
Money talks.
Why would you play regularly if you played like him? And the strip, yes. I have to say, seeing it in action after initially thinking it was a monstrosity, I think it looks beautiful.
It does.
There is a picture that was doing the rounds. It was Callum McGregor modelling the kit. You'll have seen it. It's the long sleeve version. He looks like Dennis the Menace. He's sitting there kind of like he's got the strip out of a lucky box, and it's kind of hanging off him. It looks a bit baggy, a bit loose, and it's just, people question why that ever appeared in circulation. It's just a terrible shot. But the reality is, when you see it, there's a picture of Rio Hatate in action over in Japan. It just looks stunning. And it's, I don't really care. I put a couple of things out on Twitter and I get shot down for it, but
rightly so.
Yep.
Correct.
I agree with
But
that.
it's not the most important thing, but the reality is, when we see it now in action, it actually looks pretty stylish, James.
Yeah, it's a wee break for the norm, the black piping instead of the white and stuff like that. I'm with you, I don't have a massive strong opinion on it. I thought it was a bit of a leap from what we've seen before, but I seen a kid wearing at the airport there last week, looked pretty smart. So, don't care.
Seen Arsenal's away top?
That yellow thing.
Adidas are having a year yet.
Aye.
I think
Have you
we've
seen
got
the
out
Man
all
U?
right. I really do.
Seen the Man U?
Aye.
Is that the Arsenal kit that Tierney swapped with Giacomakis? Did you see that?
Best pals.
So Arsenal played I think it was an MLS Select, and Tierney and Giacomakis swapped shot at the end. Last wee thing I want to cover on, you'll have maybe seen some other headlines, and we've kind of leaned towards it with the comments at the top of the show, that, you know, given the signings that Rangers have made, given that Celtic are, inverted commas, weaker, that it's now just a foregone conclusion that Rangers are going to walk it to the league title. Why does this happen, Miff? Time after time after time? I think it's the last 12 seasons in a row now that Rangers are just an absolute stick on to win the league. Where does all that nonsense come from?
Hope.
Play your base. That's your demographic. Your newspaper seller.
That's ultimately.
Turn out the base.
I think it's playing to the crowd and getting people to buy your newspaper. I think that's where it comes from. Clickbait, whatever method you use.
But why would you fall for it another 11 times after the first time proved to be such absolute bull?
Well, you know the old saying, fool me once, shame on me, fool me 11 times. What am I doing?
No, the line was, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me, fool me 3 times, I'm on the Rangers.
What do you make of it, Paddy, though? Pre-season cup winners for the 12th time in a row.
I love that gif that goes on Twitter, the invisible trophy.
Yeah.
And the guy just plays it every time. It turns out we've got the best advertising boards in the whole of UK, not just Scotland. Let's get the trophy out. Just everything like that. They that's what they're clutching towards. That's where they are, and it doesn't bother me in the slightest.
One thing we are firing right back at them in the close season tournament: new screens at Parkhead, new big screens. Fancy new ones. Not recycled, not bought off eBay. New ones.
Matt James is ITK. He's got an insider.
Right.
New screen is going
Thanks,
up.
Izzy.
But you know, it's frustrating when you hear all these kind of headlines at this moment in time, you know, during the pre-season. And I think from a Celtic point of view, the sooner we can get back to action, the better. And as I say, it's only now a week on Saturday before that big kick-off against Ross County. Paddy, we are now less than 2 weeks out to that Flag Day. Always a day to look forward to. How are you feeling about things at the minute?
Yeah, still very optimistic. I'm excited to see what the next 6 weeks holds for us in the transfer market, and that is a long time. I think that as a squad, we're ready domestically. I think as fans, we would like to see the players come in the next 3 to 4 weeks, have a few games under their belt, and then get themselves together to that point of the first international break in September. I think after the Rangers game. That training for those players that are still going to be about is massive, and just setting us up and being ready for the Champions League campaign. Domestically, I still think that we are well ahead with our squad at the moment. Let's just tighten things up a bit.
Yeah, James, you talk a lot about Celtic levelling up for the Champions League and about being Champions League ready. Do you still think we're a wee bit off that, as Paddy suggested?
Yeah, I think we know we are. I don't think it was really would say, let's get in the Champions League tomorrow with what we've got. That would put me right back in panic mode. No, I think there's work to be done, but there's time to do it. You know, I'm week to week on my panic schedule. 1 week I'm mad panic, like some Zen-like kind of thing. So I'm Zen-like at the moment. Get back to me in 7 days and I'll tell you where I'm at.
Miff, your hand still hovers tentatively over that panic button yourself, but final word goes to you. Anything else to add as we look to round off this week's show?
No, nothing much more than I've already said, and to add in a bit about the Flag Day just been less than 2 weeks away. The excitement towards that is building, and the boys can't wait to get back. You know, they'll have the routine of just going to the football, watching Celtic. So the quicker you get back to that, the more life feels normal.
That's fair enough.
Love that.
Profound.
Deep words, Miff. So that wraps things up on this latest episode of the Celtic Exchange Weekly. Thanks to James, Paddy and Miff for joining me today, and as always, thanks to you for tuning in. Don't forget to visit our website at thecelticexchange.com, where you can sign up for Celtic 321 and enjoy all of our additional content. But in the meantime, thanks for listening, and we'll see you again this time next week.